Hi guys, Dushan here from How to Rhino. Welcome to our newest tutorial. This time we're going to talk all about Enscape and Rhino and how you can create materials in Rhino and implement them right away in Enscape. And as you can see here, the results that you can get are quite good for a very short amount of time. So we're gonna dive deep into this tutorial on this topic. And I would also like to invite you to like this video and leave us a comment below if you like this kind of content so we can create more in the future. Also, please subscribe, and if you would like to have all of these project files, you can also do so on our Patreon page. In addition to that, if you would like more detailed, structured approach to learning Rhino and Grasshopper, you can apply for Rhino for Architects 2.0 course. First link in the description. You will need to schedule a short one-on-one consulting call with me, where I will tell you all the details and how you can join the program. So without further ado, let's get into the tutorial. Alright, so the first thing that you want to make sure that you have all of your geometry sorted in a layer structure that makes sense. So why is this important? It's important because we'll be using that layer structure later on to apply our materials. So first I'm gonna go here to the layers palette, and you will see that the division of my layers. So for example here, I have one big layer which is called building, and underneath I have a couple of other layers which are connected to my main layer which is called building. So for example, I have a layer called walls, roof and pool, and this is my parent layer, and these are like children layers that have other layers within them, and other layers within them are actually the ones that we're going to be using to apply materials. So if you can see here, I have yellow marble, dark blue marble, red marble, glass, mullions, rooftops, roof white and water. And also on the other side I have the surroundings, which are everything else except my building. And there goes a dark grass, light grass and ground. And also have a layer called Enscape trees, because we're gonna place some trees and some greenery around our building. So that's number one. You need to divide your layers, and you can see also that I put the colors to closely resemble the type of material that I'm gonna be using. So that's step number one. Step number two is to create all of those materials specifically for all of those layers. So we're gonna go to the materials panel here, but we're not gonna choose any type of Rhino material. Instead, we're gonna choose Enscape material. I'm just gonna click here, and I'm gonna type all of the materials that I have. So for example, I'm gonna start with yellow marble. Then I'm gonna create another layer, and I'm gonna also choose Enscape, and I'm gonna type blue marble, and so on. So I'm gonna now create all of those layers that are going to resemble these layers here. Alright, so now we have all of those materials created, and the next step is to apply those materials to the corresponding layers. So the easiest way to do this is to go to our layers, and I'm simply going to choose the layer that I want to apply materials to. So I'm gonna say select objects. It's gonna select all yellow marble, and now I'm gonna go here to materials, yellow marble, right click, assign to objects. And now all of the layers here, all of the yellow marble objects have the material assigned to them. So now I'm gonna simply do the same process for all the other elements. I'm gonna do now here for the blue one as well. Select a dark blue marble, go to materials, blue marble, right click, assign to objects. So now I'm gonna do this to all of them. Alright, so now once we have applied all of our materials to our layers, it's time to move on. It's time to actually create those textures for those materials. In order to do this, we need to go to this button here that says Tune Materials in the project. And here you will see all the list of all these materials cited here. So in case you have Enscape material here, it would be visible here, so you can modify it as we go along. So I'm gonna do a couple of these now, and then just to give you an idea of how you should do it, all you need to have is a simple texture of, for example, that marble that you want, or the grass, or the ground. You need seamless texture, and the best way to find those textures is to go to textures.com and create a free account. There you can get a lot of these textures. So I'm gonna simply click on the plus sign here, and I'm going to choose my blue marble texture. And I'm simply going to click use albedo here and here. And this will create automatically bump and roughness map, which gives more realism to our material. And we're pretty much done. Now we can go to the dark grass. Let's choose the texture for the dark grass. And one more thing we want to do, we want to change the type from default to grass so that we can control the grass height here, as you can see. So we can maybe modify the variation of the height and the grass. Now we have the dark roof, which is going to be this texture, and using the albedo and the reflections. And I'm gonna do the same thing now for the rest. And interesting here with the glass one is that you want to use, you actually don't have the glass layer here, but what you can use, you can say, I want the transparency and I want to have frosted glass, for example. And here you can choose the default color to be something like something bluish, but it doesn't really change anything because later on you can modify this. So I'm going to show you as well how this is done. But for now, let's keep the opacity, let's say, at lowest, because that's what we want. We want to have the refractive glass and to be transparent. And this is where you change the refractive index. I'm going to show you later on when we go and we see our materials how this will be affected. That's all you need to do for the glass. The ground, we need to choose the texture that we have prepared with the bump and the roughness. And also light grass, we also have the texture for the light grass. We also need to put here the grass type and use albedo. Reflections we don't need. Grass height here, you can play around with this and so on. So I'm going to simply do the same process for all of these guys. And that's pretty much all you need to do. You don't need to worry too much about having very different, materials, because you will see later on how this will look like with simply doing just this basic stuff. So here we have mullions. In this case, I'm going to choose clear coat. I'm going to choose some darkish color, and that's going to be enough for this one. Red marble, I'm going to choose my texture for red marble, and also use albedo for bump and reflections. And for the water, we're gonna simply type here water, and that's all we need. We can maybe change the water color, make it something bluish, and so on. So we're gonna also see how this turns out at the end. And the yellow marble, it's the last one we have. Actually, I created it here as rather grayish than yellowish, but it's up to you to decide how you want all of this to look like. So now we have all of these materials applied. But what happens next? So the next thing is, now we have all of those materials and you can see how they look here in the viewport. You have an idea of how they would look like. If you want to see this a bit better, you can right click and you can simply click here floating preview, and it will give you the material, the viewport. You can see it a bit better. But the best thing is to actually start Enscape and see what you got. So let's save this for now. And once we have this saved, let's start the Enscape engine and let's see what we got. So I'm gonna click here, start Enscape. All right, so now we have our rendering. And as you can see here, it looks a bit messy. It looks like there's a lot of different things going on, and we're not sure why. For example, why this grass is looking so weird and why all of this is messed up. Maybe the water looks good, but I actually think that nothing is as we want it to be, except maybe for the glass and maybe for these mullions, but we also need to play around with that. So how do we fix this? The thing here is that we need to play around with the texture mapping of the materials themselves. So I'm gonna minimize this, because what we did here, we applied just the materials, but we didn't say to Rhino, okay, how do you want to apply them, or how this texture will actually be located on particular surface. So for that reason, we need to do a couple of things here. So we need to go to properties here, and we need to choose texture mapping, And once you're in this window, all you need to do is let's isolate this, and let's maybe go to rendered mode just so you see the difference. So you can see how this grass is stretched out. So how do we actually make it look normal? We need to use box mapping or surface mapping. In this case, I want to go with box mapping because we're gonna use this later on. So I'm just simply going to click here, and now I want to create one box that has dimensions of 1 by 1 by 1. This means that I'm gonna type here 1 more time, and 1 more time, and I'm gonna click enter. And now as soon as I do this, you can see how my texture is actually located in that 1 by 1 by 1 box. And this means that this is the way you can control it, and this is the way you can scale it. This is the way you control the tiling of your texture. So for example, if I click on show mapping, you will see this box, and we can also scale it directly there. So if you think that this scaling is maybe wrong, you can go to Enscape and you can check and see if this is correct. If you like what you see when you zoom in, for example, when I zoom in, you can see how we actually get the grass itself. And I can come back, I can uncover everything, and I can go to the shaded mode. And now when I go back, you can see if this mapping makes sense. If not, you can increase it. So for example, we can increase this cube, let's say scale, and I'm gonna click in this point, I'm gonna type factor of 2. And now this is 2 times bigger. And you can see here as well that this increased, and so on. So that's how you control the texture tiling, by controlling the mapping of a particular surface or a particular element. But for example, why in case you don't want to do this for every single surface or element in your scene, there's very quick and easy way you can do this for all the other things. So for example, you can simply select this guy and select this guy, and you can use this option here. It says match mapping. So I'm gonna click here. Now it's gonna ask me what is your source object. So I'm simply going to say this is my source object because I already have that ready. And once you go to Enscape, you can see that now my grass on the other side is also mapped perfectly, just like I wanted, as well as my ground here. And my texture on the ground is the one just like I want it to be. So that's a very quick and easy way how you can go about this. But of course, sometimes you want to have different type of mapping. For example, in this case, we will have different mapping for the walls and different mapping for maybe this bench or maybe this surface on the bottom. So that means that, for example, I'm going to select, let's say I'm going to select this whole thing, and I'm gonna say I want to see how this looks like. Let's match the mapping, and you can see that now we have better resolution here. You can see that now this texture looks much more realistic, but I maybe think that this mapping needs to be a little bit different. I think this is maybe needs to be even smaller. So I think I would go for maybe like 1 by 1. So in that case, I need to go to show widget or to show mapping, and in this case I want to scale it. So I'm gonna click scale 0.5, enter, and that's all. And now once I go to my Enscape, you will see that I get much finer texture now once we have changed that element. So that's one thing to note. And don't worry, because we didn't change this one, because this one stays at the same. And if you click on this one, you can see that that it's smaller than this one. All right, so that's great. But for example, for the walls, we want to have the bigger scaling. So I'm gonna select the walls like this, and I'm gonna use match mapping. I'm gonna use the bottom one, but as I said, for these elements here, I'm gonna use the smaller mapping, the denser one, and that's gonna be the same as my surface here below. So I'm gonna say match mapping with this one, and you can see now the result. if we zoom in here, you can see how the mapping of this element here is not the same as the mapping of the one on the bottom, and that's exactly what we want. We want to achieve a little bit of difference there. And in addition to all of this, we also need to do the mapping of all the other objects. So I'm going to simply select, or actually I'm gonna hide the yellow marble layer. I'm going to select all of the other layers like this, and I'm going to simply use match mapping for all of them at once to use the same mapping as this one. And I'm gonna uncover everything, and now when we go to Enscape, everything should be working perfectly. So let's check that. And now you can see how I don't have this big texture on the roof. Everything seems much nicer here. I can see my texture here, my red marble texture, as well as my blue marble texture here on this side. If I zoom in, you can see that I get nice result exactly like I wanted. And you can even see the water here in the shadows. You can see how the water would look like in 3D. You even have some kind of waves going on for the wind, and that's you can see this in this direction like this. So that's what we control in this place here for the water. We create the direction angle, the caustic intensity scale, and so on. So that's how we apply the materials, and that's how you can actually change the materials very quickly and very easily. And now is the time that we add some trees around our building. Let's do that now. Alright, so now let's check out Enscape's model library. You can click on it here, and it will open up the Enscape asset library, which contains a lot of interesting things that you can use. For example, you have here many different elements that you can put in your interior scenes. You also have furniture elements, you have lighting sources, you have people, street props, vegetation, and vehicles. So in this case, let's just experiment a little bit. Let's choose people, and let's maybe use some of those models just to show you how that would look like. So for example, let's choose this model, and it's gonna ask us where you want to place it. So I'm gonna click here and click on it, and that will automatically place the object here. And this is how the model would look like. And of course you can put as many people as you want inside, but before I go on, I have the current layer as the building, so that's something that I don't want to do. I want to have my objects here in the Enscape. In this case, this is called Enscape trees, but we're gonna keep it on the same layer. Let's change object layer, and let's put this as a current layer, so everything that we import goes onto that layer. And maybe let's put one more person here. Let's say this couple, and let's put them, I don't know, maybe here. And let's see if, yeah, that looks fine. So we have those models. In case you think they might be smaller, you can of course scale them up. I think they're okay now for this particular example. Let's slightly increase them like so, and I think that would be enough. All right, and for example, this is the people, and we can also put some trees behind vegetation. If you click on vegetation, there is this huge library that you can choose from. So you have many different variations of the trees. So in this case, let's maybe use these 5, and I'm gonna click on first one and just populate them now. So I'm gonna randomly place them, and later on we're gonna see how we can position them better if we want, like so. I'm aware that the location itself in Barcelona has a building here on the left side, but we're gonna disregard that. We're gonna just create it as if there is no buildings around. And that, I think that would be fine, just to show you the concept of how this works. So for example, now of course I can take these trees and I can position them wherever I want. I can maybe copy some of them. I can then of course scale them if I think that they need scaling. I can rotate them, and I can pretty much use them as you can see, as meshes in my Rhino viewport. They are all meshes or models from Enscape that are going to work with the Enscape rendering engine, and that's exactly what we want and what we need. And now, for example, let's check out and let's see how this would look like in Enscape. So let's switch to the Enscape window, and right away you can see what we got. So we got a pretty nice view from here. If you go from here, you can see that people are actually, you know, in color, in materials with the shadows, and in the background we see the trees. And that's pretty cool for, like, you know, 15-20 minute work that you can texture and implement in your models right away. And one thing that I also wanted to show you here is that you have these Enscape options that you can play around with. And for example, now I cannot show you in real time what's changing, but here, for example, you can change the type of presets that you want. So for example, white cubes is what is it there currently, but if you press it to clear, you can see that now here we don't have the background. If you put to forest, you will get the different like backgrounds, but I think white cubes is pretty fine for this particular example. And now here you can control the clouds, you can control the density of the clouds, if you want them to be dense or not dense. You have this variety. You have, I don't know, like how you want to position them, and also you can control not only the sky, but you can also control some general options as well. Here we have the rendering quality, motion blur, field of view, exposure brightness. So for example, if we increase this, you can see how the colors will become, you know, whiter, so on. You can also use this auto exposure, but in this case it's not going to work well, so we want to keep it as this. And maybe you have some more options here. For example, grass rendering is turned on. This is what I usually want to have. All of these other things are pretty, you know, standard. You have here the how you want to control it with the mouse, and that's what we have here. And now I just wanted to show you one last thing, how you can use this Enscape viewer. So for example, you can see here it says fly mode. This means that now I can, you know, scroll around, go around, and do whatever I want. And what if I want to walk through the building? I just need to use the space, and it will bring me to the ground. So let's just do that for a second. Let's click space, and now you can see that I have ability to walk. You can see here we have W, A, S, and D as the tools that we are going to use to move, and we can use Q. You can use Q and A to go up and down if you're in the fly mode. So this is how this would look like. And of course, if I want to look around, I just take and I go inside, and you can see that right now I'm inside the pavilion. You can see how it looks. You have here the glass. You can see that the glass has a little bit blurry effect because we gave it that effect in the materials. Usually here there is like some furniture that we can add. So let's go out. Let's see the pool here. Here's the pool. We also have here one, you know, statue that is located here. And when we go around, you will get to this point where we enter all around. And this is like the trees that we just planted. So you can see how this all looks from the inside. And of course, if we go here, you can see how this would turn out to be. Now I'd like to share something with you. If you're interested in having a more detailed and more structured approach to learning Rhino and Grasshopper, I invite you to send an application for Rhino for Architects 2.0 program. First link in the description, where you will get step-by-step approach to learning parametric modeling, organic modeling, V-Ray rendering, project presentation, and much more. Click on the first link in the description, schedule your free one-on-one consulting call with me, and I hope to see you inside the program. I'd also like to thank all of our Patreon supporters. If you wish to have the project files of all our YouTube tutorials, including this one, you can get them by supporting us on Patreon for $5 a month. To all of our Patreons, thank you for all the support. It really helps us to create even better and more valuable content for you.